let's start and
Yeah.
then anybody else can find us. So I'm Jafet Mamburi. I worked in M&D for quite a while, over 10 years. My background is in statistics and social statistics from the University of Nairobi. I did my master's in social statistics about 5 years ago, and from then I've always been interested in sharing what I know or whatever skills that I have. And basically, my interest is not necessarily to provide skills, but to provide support to people who are already skilled and they're working, so that whatever skills that you had or knowledge that you've gathered, in the past in different areas, you can always apply that using these basic tools like Excel in a meaningful way. So that's why I decided to start this consulting services purely for that purpose, to offer this support. So today I will take us through quickly data cleaning, some insights. I believe that if as a project manager or an M&D manager in a project, your interest is to always provide insights that are clear, insights that are useful. And without clean data, it's very difficult for that to happen. And in most cases, you may end up, misreporting, over-reporting, under-reporting. Many issues can come up, and sometimes it comes like lies, because you didn't have clean data too from the start. So this is an area that I have worked in for quite a while. Being a statistician myself, it's an area of interest. So, and it's one of the most tasking task, I would say, in Monday cleaning, data cleaning. It takes quite some time, and you have to do it in a very consistent and auditable way, such that if anybody comes and asks, like, where did you get up? For example, you say the average age of the people you're supporting is, say, 21. You have to be able to be audited from the start, from where you collected the data to the where you're reporting that average age. So it's a process that starts off that data management, process, or data analysis process. So just quickly, just an overview of the principles that we to understand the principles of data cleaning, and it's simple. It's a process of detecting and correcting or removing corrupt or inaccurate records, and there are many ways of identifying this. I will take us through maybe a 10-15 minutes practical session towards the end, to just show you how can you identify some of these, and correcting some of these errors, or in data, or identifying them. First of all, you identify them, and then there's a way to either correct them or remove them from the data, so that at the end of the process, you're able to analyze cleaned data. So, of course, principles of data quality basically is, or cleaned data. It needs to be accurate. That's number one. It needs to be complete. So as much as possible, we try and ensure that the data that we're receiving is complete from the process of data collection. So data cleaning in fact, it starts at the process where you're now either digitizing your tool or coming up with the questionnaire. You need to ensure that your skip logics are in a way that you don't leave out data, or you don't get incomplete data. Your validation, your validations that you put in there, validation criteria, they have to be, in a way that you don't lose out data. For example, if you're working, for example, with youth, youth are between the age of 18 and 35. And then maybe in your questionnaire, you do not include a certain age group there. For example, you only put 18 or 18 to 30, and you do not include 30 to 35. That already brings a problem of completeness. So in such a criteria, in such a scenario, I would advise somebody to, have under 18 and have over 35, and ensure that you group the 18 to 35 in a meaningful manner. For example, in most cases, you'd consider, older youth and younger youth. Maybe have 18 to 25, then 25 to 35, or have age groups of like 4 or 5 years so that your data is complete. Consistency simply means that your data is consistent. That's the word. Like, I would give an example, where, for example, you tell me your name is Japheth, and then tomorrow I ask you the same question and you tell me a different name. That shows already inconsistency in your responses, and those are the kind of things we look for. Validity, of course, the data needs to be valid, and of course uniformity. It's homogeneity and all that. So it's important that to ensure that the data that we're receiving is organized in a uniform manner. For example, all the columns are complete. Every entry is done, and all that. And of course, uniformity can mean many things, but I would think of it in that way. For the case of data cleaning. So basically, I've talked about what cleaned data brings about. It of course improve the analysis of the data you're reporting. The report that you provide is clean and it's of good quality, and of course ensure that you make good decisions in your project. So, and identifying and handling common data issues. So we've talked about them. I'm going to repeat. Missing data is one of those. And please, if you have a question, I'll have a Q&A session at the end. So missing data is one of those data cleaning. Those are areas that we look for. I will show you how to look for those ones. Duplicates, of course, and duplicates are more like where records, somebody might respond more than once, and the data is the same. So including that in your analysis already jeopardizes your analysis and your reports. Inconsistent formatting, I would give an example of currencies. Some people are in budgeting, and you're looking at a budget, and probably you receive money in USD and then you spend it in Kenya shillings. It's very important to ensure that before you produce your report, you've checked to ensure that the currency is consistent. And in that way, you ensure that you don't have inconsistent formatting. Outliers are situations where, for example, somebody misreports their age. Somebody might say they are 120 years. We know that is very, very rare and very strange. Somebody might say they are a youth, and then they say they are 37 years. Those are the kind of things we look for in terms of outliers, because our data, if you're talking about youth and we're ensuring that the people we're collecting data from are youth, then you don't expect to have somebody who is 50 years old. That's an outlier. And then outliers could also be they could be okay. They could be the right response, but it's something that you're not expecting to have in your data. So outliers could be errors caused by errors in the data, or it could be a special situation that you do not expect to have. Sometimes you say those are like what's this horse with a horn? I don't know what it's called, but unicorns. I would say it's a rare situation. You didn't expect it. So approaches to handling these issues would be something like can remove the data. If the data is inconsistent, situationally remove. You can go back and collect that data again. You can normalize or standardize the data. So basically, there are certain situations, for example, when you're talking about, I'll give an example that is very common in education. We know that in education, maybe in the past, I don't know now how CBC works, but there's grading system, and grading system has the lowest grade and the highest grade. For example, if you're talking about percentage, it's 0% to 100%. If you're grading anything above that, it's a different situation. But we expect that the data is standardized in such a way that it's percentage, in a way, if it's percentage, it's percentage. So percentages help us standardize the data in other cases. For example, if you're taking things like BMI helps us standardize the data in such a way that, you're looking at a height of a person and you're looking at their weight. And when you calculate that, you standardize the data and say, this is body mass index. And it's an index that can be used to do an analysis in such a way that you can now compare people who are taller, people who are shorter, and people who are fat, and people who are slim, and in that way you can be able to see standardization. So standardization is a very interesting process, and it helps us. There are many ways of standardizing, yeah, percentages. We can use what are they called, proportions to standardize data, and their indexes. There are different indexes like poverty indexes and all this. They help us standardize the data and things like that. Of course, validation checks. I talked about validation in such a way that you have to do it from when you're developing your tool to ensure that you don't have people who are outside, a certain, for example, if you're talking about youth, you put validation checks in such a way that if somebody says they are 37 and they're youth, they're supposed to be 35 and below, then you can ask them, oh, you're saying you're a youth, but you're 39 years old. So maybe you said it wrong or something like that, and that has to happen from when you're developing the tools. Yes, and then of course I'll talk about now some of. Then I'll go into a short practical session to show you how to use some of these functions. So in Excel, you can either use formulas, functions like these ones, to trim your data, to clean your data, and then there are other, you can use pivot tables to also organize your data and summarize them and see whether, there's, for example, if you're talking about categories, if your data is categorized very well, you can be able to check and see whether there are categories that are outside. You can run, for example, if you're doing, you're doing, for example, you're looking at grades 0 to 100%, right? You can always run maybe in pivot tables and be able to see if there's anybody who is below 0 or above 100, and you can be able to see these errors and kind of that. And then we'll talk about tools within Excel, like data validation. It's a tool that I'll show you in Excel, so that when you're entering your data, you can be able to validate it as you enter the data, especially if you have hard copies and you're trying to avoid errors. Sometimes when data entry can be quite what's the word, repetitive, and you get to a situation where you start clicking in and probably you write the wrong thing, and in that way you end up making errors. How to remove duplicates, sort and filter functions. The tools are very useful, tools that you can use to check your data, for clean it and things like that. Conditional formatting, I use that a lot to in Excel to be able to identify, certain, if you want to see, for example, how many people are between this edge range, say 30 to 35, I can use conditional formatting, and I'll show you how to do that to be able to identify those and see who they are. And then, of course, pivot tables, I'll talk about them even further when we come to summarizing data and analyzing data. And then, of course, at the end of the day, you want to see clean data set. So I will stop here and then share an Excel file and be able to take you through generated, just to be able, that is not very clean, so that we can be able to use some of these functions in Excel to be able to identify and clean. And I'll start with the basics. This is person one. You can see here there are gaps in the data. I have age, and we'll see age that is above or below a certain age group. We'll see how to identify those and clean them. Okay, so this is a short data set just for this function. Okay, so I will start with, whenever you have data, this is like, I would say this is like my raw data from the field. It came in like this, and I'm the M&D person or the project manager there in the office, trying to figure out, oh, what's wrong with this data. First of all, I will, what I usually do is put this in a table format. So I select the whole data. The way I select it is I hold Control Shift and then arrow, side arrow, to select the whole first column, and then just still holding on Control Shift, I go down with the down arrow up to the end. So the down arrow, the up arrow, just to move, up arrow to move. So that's like a shortcut, but you can use if you have, it's easier if you're working with larger data sets to do this. Once you select your data, the next best move is to put it in table format. So you select it like that, you go to insert, you insert table, and it says here, my table has headers. So it selects the whole table. You can see the selection thing there. And then you just say, okay, so the headers are the the first column, that name, gender, age, scores, and ID. And then of course, once you select it like this, it's very easy now to work with this table. Now, the first thing I would do is to identify gaps.
If you could share the Excel.
Yes, I will share the Excel, the raw one later.
As you describe.
Yes. So the first thing I usually do is I use the filters. We talked about filters, and so once you select the table and you put it in table format, you don't have to select again when you're doing things like filters, when you're doing things like sorting. It becomes easier. So one of the things I do is check like this, just to see blanks. So what I do, because sometimes you might have so many using this up and down here, using your could be a bit challenging. So I usually know that Excel has blanks. I'll say blanks instead of going to find it down there, and then it comes here checked, and then I'll say, so I can see in my data I have 5 under the name. They're like 5 that are blank. If I want, and then I usually use, okay, you can come here and click, but usually use Control, Shift and L just to remove Control Shift or Function Shift and L, depends with your laptop, but Control Shift and L to just remove the filters, and then Control Shift and L to return the filters. It's a shortcut for putting in filters, and it helps you move faster. Gender, I will check the same like that. So for example, for gender, I will know the correct ones are male, female. These others are errors, but I can see F male should be female. So I can always come here and say F male. And the way I correct it, I would just say, I would put the first female, because I've filtered, yeah? And then I will drag, hold, don't double click the black cursor, and then drag. It corrects only what is being seen here, right? So now, under female, if I return my filters, and you can return the filters the way by clicking up there, but if you return your filters, you will not have any F male. You see that that was the one was wrong. You've removed it. Now I'll come here and say MLE. I know this is male, and somebody made an error. I will come and do the same thing. Oh, correct just the first cell, and then put my cursor at the end here and drag over. I have to drag it over the ones that are, and then correct it. You can use find and replace, and you can use find and replace as well to do this. So let me just undo so that we can use find and replace. Find and replace is another way of also correcting data that has been entered wrongly. So I will just undo. Okay, just click the undo, the normal undo. So if you don't want to use filters, and you have these errors, we can correct maybe which one has errors again? See. Oh, I corrected it. Just undo. Okay, so find and replace, of course, Control F is for find, and then you can always move to replace, or you can just do Control H directly to just go to replace. So find and replace, you find the error. You have to, of course, check the filters to see where the error is, and the error is MLE. So I can just come and use MLE and just say replace with mel. This is another way of also cleaning data that has been entered wrongly, and it will show you how many errors were there. There were 7, and you've corrected MLE to mel. So this is how easier way to do it. Another, if I was using a formula and I know MLE is an error and I want to use a formula, I can say is equals if, now this is a bit complicated, but you're saying if this cell has is equals to MLE, replace with, this is another way of doing, if you want to keep the column, yeah, if this is equals to this, put MLE, otherwise just put whatever was there. So that way you're able to keep the original column, but then where there is an error, oh sorry, I'd already corrected MLE. Sorry, my time is running out. I will just almost, yeah, I have like a few minutes, like 10 minutes. So I'll have 10 minutes to show you. Okay, I did for MLE. I'd already corrected it. Let me just do for the female. The error was, okay, the error was, oh, let me undo, because I think I corrected the error as well. Undo. Yes, now the MLE is still there. Okay, yes, great. Now the MLE is there, so I will say is equals. Now here I'm using if functions to correct this column B, but I'm creating a new column so that I can still have column B remaining there. So that's another way of data cleaning, such a way that we still keep the original data within the same, yes. So if this one is equals to this error MLE, and I've used my filters to check, then I wanted to correct it to mel. But then if it doesn't have that error, just keep it the way it is. So you see, where there is MLE, for example, here column B here, I can see it's MLE, then the correct answer is, it has corrected it to mel, and it has kept all the other columns. You get? And then I would just do another one next, because I knew there's another error. So I'm keeping with the original and using if function. It's a bit, if this column now, the ones the new one I've put is equals to the other error was the other error was let me just say let me just make a few errors for the next one. Say, anyway, you understand it. I think I cleaned it too much, but yeah, if there is an error MLE, now you can see here this column is clean. It has male, female, and 0. Now I'm going to show you where there was a blank, it has put a 0. Now to clean this formula again, remember the if error. Now you put if error, or if NA, we'll see which one works. It should leave a blank, so that now wherever there was a blank, it is still there. So the good thing with Excel formula is that if NA or if NA. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's okay. There's a way to just have the blanks, the zeros be blank. Yeah. So that it doesn't replace the, but we know where there's a blank, usually with some of these formulas, it brings, let me just show you. If I put it here, if this is equals to 0, I would say blank, then give me this. It's another way to just quickly, instead of thinking too much, just remove the zeros, right? Actually, how I do it now, I will now take this one to a different, you see now, I've just put a formula just to say, if whatever I've created has a 0, it should be a blank. Then, of course, you run this formula throughout the whole data set. And now you have your cleaned column with everything clean. Now you can have another, maybe you have another data set where now cleaning in a different sheet where you're now saying, now let me show you now. You have clean data. You know, gender is column B. You can come to this new, it said cleaned, because you're using formulas and you don't want to replace your original data set. Maybe data is still coming from